the architecture of deception, human and jinn devils, and the gradual eclipse of inner clarity. How many types of devils are there? Categories of devils. Answer: devils are of two essential types, as affirmed by the Almighty in the verse. They whisper into the hearts of humankind, from among the jinn and humankind. From this decisive revelation, it becomes immediately evident that devils exist both among the jinn and among human beings. This distinction is foundational, for it clarifies that corruption and deception are not confined to unseen forces alone, but also operate actively and systematically through human agents embedded within social, political, economic, and cultural structures. These devils have collaborators within human society. As further emphasized in the verse, they secretly transmit misleading ideas to their allies, so those allies can debate, confuse, and pressure you. In practical terms, this means that devils transmit insidious thoughts to their human partners, not merely as isolated temptations, but as organized patterns of influence designed to provoke confusion, normalize distortion, manufacture justification, and obstruct obedience to God and fundamental moral clarity. God the Exalted refers to such people, those who encourage corruption and hinder righteousness, as hypocrites, as he states. Hypocritical men and women belong to one another. They reinforce one another, commanding what is wrong and preventing what is right. Within the category of human devils, a further differentiation becomes necessary, for their modes of operation are not uniform. These human devils fall into two further categories. 1. Those who entice others to return to ethically destructive patterns they themselves once practiced, such as individuals who normalize addiction, exploitation, corruption, or moral compromise, pressuring others to relapse, conform, or abandon restraint under the guise of freedom, realism, maturity, or social acceptance. 2. More dangerously, those who originate, systematize, and institutionalize corruption, including political actors who legalize harm, economic architects who rationalize exploitation, ideological figures who reframe moral collapse as progress, and cultural influencers who embed distortion into education, media, or public consciousness. Such individuals carry a lasting burden, for their influence does not end with themselves, but extends across generations. Their share in wrongdoing increases with every person shaped by their influence, rendering them fully accountable in the sight of God, the Almighty and All-Just. This principle is reinforced in the verse. Whoever supports, promotes, or facilitates a good cause will share in its benefit. And whoever supports, promotes, or facilitates a harmful or wrongful cause will share in its responsibility and consequence. Accordingly, in societies where certain destructive behaviors were once ethically restrained, those who introduced, promoted, normalized, or protected such degeneration, especially while occupying positions of authority, leadership, or cultural influence, are rightly regarded as the architects of corruption and companions of devils. This pattern is not confined to a single civilization, ideology, or geographic region. Across the contemporary world, similar mechanisms appear under different cultural vocabularies. In some Western contexts, moral erosion is reframed as personal freedom, innovation, or market efficiency. In parts of East Asia, it may be justified through appeals to social harmony, productivity, or collective necessity. In post-imperial or post-ideological societies, it often appears under the language of national security, historical destiny, or stability, and in regions burdened by poverty, conflict, or external pressure, it manifests through normalized corruption, survival economies, or inherited power structures. Though the forms vary, the underlying moral architecture remains the same. Distortion is legalized, conscience is anesthetized, and responsibility is displaced. From the cumulative weight of these texts, it becomes clear that devils are of two kinds, jinn devils and human devils. Before examining the characteristics of human devils in greater depth, It is methodologically sound to first examine the devils among the jinn, their means of operation, psychological strategies, social organization, and patterns of influence. Jinn devils are divided into two categories. 1. The inward devil, which operates through the ego. Impulse, habitual desire, and inner distortion. 2. The external or cosmic devil, which operates through environments, collective pressures, dominant cultures, and systemic forces. Among the clarifying verses is, indeed, Satan is a manifest enemy to humankind. This verse decisively reframes the nature of enmity. Satan is not merely an adversary of the body, wealth, or worldly comfort. He is the sworn enemy of one's living connection to God, inner clarity, and moral awareness. His objective is to sever this connection, to lead the human being toward the denial of God, and to extinguish the light of spiritual responsibility. Once this rupture occurs, he disowns his victim, as described in the verse. The likeness of those who fall into disbelief is this: Satan draws them forward gradually, step by step, adorning each wrongful act in the sight, until the path finally culminates in the denial of God. When Satan sees that a person has reached this state, having rejected and denied the divine, Satan withdraws and feigns innocence, declaring, "I fear God." At that moment, Satan severs all ties, abandons the person entirely, and openly proclaims disavowal and distance from them. Satan's method is neither sudden nor crude. He glamorizes falsehood and repackages rebellion against God as freedom, sophistication, courage, or intellectual independence, until denial of God quietly takes root within the soul. Only then does he retreat, abandoning the individual to inner collapse and estrangement. Yet this outcome is not inevitable for every soul. It applies only to those who persist in the denial of God until death. As long as conscious awareness remains, and the truth has not been deliberately rejected, the door of return and restoration remains open. However, it is crucial to emphasize the following: if a person, while still possessing intellectual clarity and moral awareness, repeatedly postpones return and reconciliation with God, then at the moment of death, when the body is weakened, the mind is unstable, and the soul is exposed, the individual faces an extraordinary trial. At that moment, three realities converge. 1. Physical vulnerability, strength fades. Attention scatters, the limbs grow weak, and the body approaches its final threshold. 2. Psychological fragility, habits dominate. Fear intensifies, and the capacity to initiate new inner acts diminishes. 3. Spiritual exposure, the soul stands without its former supports, and long-neglected inner disciplines are no longer easily summoned. To illustrate this reality, a well-known parable is often cited. A spiritual mentor and social leader was once asked if return to God is accepted until the soul reaches the throat. Why do you urge people to cultivate repentance and conscious return throughout their lives? The mentor replied, "What is your profession?" The man answered that he practiced a demanding profession requiring precision under pressure, such as surgery, aviation, or engineering. The mentor asked, "If at the moment of death, when the angel of death stands before you, when Satan is actively assaulting your inner certainty, when your limbs are weak, your body is collapsing, and your mind is unstable, you are unable to perform a profession you practiced daily for decades, how do you expect to perform the most delicate inner act of all, sincere return to God, a discipline you never practiced at all?" The man acknowledged the truth of this and fell silent. The mentor concluded, "That is why the human being must train the heart in return throughout life, so that even under weakness, pressure, and spiritual exposure, the soul remembers how to turn back to God." This account dismantles the illusion of last-minute transformation and exposes the danger of prolonged spiritual negligence. To summarize, Satan is not the enemy of your wealth, body, or social success. He is the enemy of your God-given inner clarity and awareness of the divine, which alone anchors meaning, accountability, and moral order. How Satan steals this light will be examined in later sections. For now, it is enough to remember that his closest accomplice is the ego, the part of the human being inclined toward domination. Impulse, distorted desire, and corrupted patterns of thought. In the early stages, Satan does not advance violently. He advances gradually through repetition, normalization, linguistic manipulation, and moral justification until ethical sensitivity erodes and spiritual orientation collapses. He achieves this largely through conceptual deception, renaming actions to anesthetize conscience. In personal life, exploitation becomes networking, and intimacy without responsibility becomes love. In economics, exploitation becomes market necessity. Greed becomes growth, and inequality becomes merit. In politics, oppression becomes security. Injustice becomes national interest, and censorship becomes stability. In philosophy, denial of God becomes enlightenment. Nihilism becomes intellectual honesty, and moral relativism becomes freedom. In society, moral erosion becomes progress. Imitation becomes modernity, and fragmentation becomes liberation. He whispers, everyone does this. Or you are not responsible, it's systemic. Or later, you will return to meaning and reconnect with God. Yet by later, the human being often means the end of life, when strength has faded. Habits are entrenched, the body is weak. And repentance is no longer a calm choice, but a desperate struggle. Through these layered illusions, Satan dismantles inner resistance, silences moral awareness, and detaches the soul from accountability before God. Gradually, responsibility is dismissed. Ethical restraint is mocked, and spiritual life is reduced to hollow symbolism. Eventually, denial of God may settle within the heart, even if outward language remains polite, academic, or sophisticated. If this condition persists until death, the person may depart estranged from God, severed from the ultimate source of meaning. Mercy and restoration, may God protect us from such an end. This ultimately is Satan's objective, the denial of God and the extinction of spiritual clarity. All his strategies, whether inward or outward, personal or systemic, converge upon this single aim. As the discussion concluded, the listener said, "Your explanations are profoundly illuminating, like medicine that both stings and heals. With each word, clarity increases. How invaluable it would be if these reflections were organized into a unified work and offered to those today who stand at the crossroads of belief and denial, or who wander in confusion between politics, spirituality, identity, and borrowed ideologies. These reflections prepare the ground for a more precise and technical inquiry. If devils operate through both inner impulses and outer systems, through the ego, language, environments, habits, institutions, and collective pressures, then it becomes necessary to differentiate their modes of operation with greater specificity. For while the previous chapter established the existence of both human and jinn devils, it did not yet distinguish the internal mechanics through which jinn devils attach themselves to individuals, nor the external forces through which they amplify influence across societies. Accordingly, the next chapter turns from classification to specialization. It examines how jinn devils are divided into personal internal and external cosmic categories, how each operates within distinct domains, and how their strategies are tailored to the individual's capacity, profession, temperament, and social position. Thus, the inquiry now proceeds inward, toward the personal devil assigned to each human being, before expanding outward to the cosmic and environmental forces that shape collective temptation and distortion.